Welcome, everybody. My name is Rana, and I represent the Park Slope Food Co-op Cooking Squad. Thank you for joining our May class. Some of you are coming in, dialing in from Brooklyn, members of the food co-op, some of you ranging far afield, including from Srishti's hometown in California. So tonight's chef is Srishti Jain, and she's going to be teaching us about Indian cooking, specifically highlighting a recipe from her brand new cookbook called Make It Plant-Based Indian. I'll let her tell you about the dish. It's a lemon rice dish, but let me tell you first a little bit about Srishti. She's a California Indian food writer, a recipe developer, vegetarian chef, and she grew up in the Bay Area and began fusing Western produce and Eastern cuisine from a young age. Throughout her career, her focus has been on expanding her creativity with vegetables and pastry skills. She's known for supper clubs in California and New York, London, and beyond, as well as chef at various restaurants here in Brooklyn. She also writes a newsletter inspiring home cooks to build their own menus and host more dinner parties. And she currently resides in our own hometown of Brooklyn, New York. Srishti, whenever you're ready, take it away.
Sure. Thank you, everyone, for joining this cooking class. And thank you so much, Rana, for the introduction and the whole PSFC cooking squad for this opportunity. I really appreciate it. Yeah, this is my cookbook, Make It Plant-Based Indian. It came out last Tuesday, and it's something that I've been working on for about 2.5 years now. And it's part of a series of 4 plant-based books, all set all they're all plant-based books, all for different cuisines. So mine's the Indian one, and there's also a Filipino one, a Mexico one, and a Southern one. So I encourage you to check them all out. And we'll be cooking this dish, this lemon rice dish, from the book, which you can see a photo of here. And this is a dish that I've eaten basically my entire life. I'm North Indian, but the dish is South Indian. But my mom has always known how to make it, and it's like a really simple. You'll see how easy it is, and if you've read the recipe already, you know how easy it is. But it's a really simple kind of fried rice dish. I like to eat it kind of on its own, or with yogurt, or with plant-based yogurt. But you can also eat it on the side with any kind of lentil or curry. So here I have my mise en place. I have all of my ingredients laid out. And then you can, and so I'm gonna show you what I'm doing here, and then my stove is behind me, so I'll show you there as well. But yeah, feel free to pause anytime or stop me anytime if you have any questions. So the very first step of this recipe is simple. It's just making rice. And one thing about this recipe is you can actually use rice that you've already made or that you have in the fridge. Similar to fried rice, you don't have to make rice fresh for this. So it's a really nice way to use rice that you already have if you want to zhuzh it up a little bit. And so the recipe calls for 2 cups of rice, but I'm actually going to be halving the recipe. I live alone and I have a flight tomorrow morning, so I don't need too much rice. And so everything that you'll see will be half, but I'll narrate that and make sure that it's really clear. So I have 1 cup of rice here. It's basmati rice that I have rinsed and ready to go. I just ran it in a sieve under some water and got all the starch out. And the reason I like to use basmati rice, and it's common in Indian cooking, is the grains are like more separated than something like jasmine rice or short grain white rice. And especially for a dish like this that has a lot of components, you don't want the rice clumping together too much. And so something like a basmati rice is the right kind of rice. And then same with the water ratio. This uses like a 1.5 cup of water to, or I think it uses 1 1/4 cup water to a 1 cup of rice ratio. It doesn't matter if the rice is slightly undercooked because you will be cooking the rice a little bit further in the pan with all the other ingredients. So don't fear too much if your rice is slightly undercooked. So the first step I'm going to do is I'm going to add the rice. I'm going to get a pot going on the stove, medium high heat. and add the rice. And I'm also going to add my water, which I have pre-measured here. And I also like to have just a spoon to stir it a bit to make sure the rice is kind of distributed evenly in the pot. And what I'm looking for here, I'm gonna add a splash more of water actually. I think it looks a little. What I'm waiting for here is the water to come up to like a simmer slash a boil. And then at that point, I'm gonna reduce the heat to low and cover it and cook the rice for about 12 minutes. That's how long I like to cook white rice. And then before I remove the lid, I'm gonna let it sit for a couple more minutes just to, fully cook and be ready for the dish. So this dish comes together really fast because while the rice is cooking, you can do the rest of the prep, and start the kind of mixture for the rice. And so I'll walk through the different steps that we're going to do here and the ingredients that I have in front of me, and how I'm going to use them. So I have this is chana dal, or it's like yellow split peas. And also, I got all these ingredients from the co-op. So if you're a member of the co-op, you can get all of these at the co-op, which is really cool. And I'll talk about a couple of them, why some of them I'm so excited that you can get the co-op. But I have these mustard seeds, which is a really common spice in South Indian cooking. And then I have these lentils, which you might be surprised by seeing a dry lentil being added to a dish, but it adds a really nice crunch and it's a really nice juxtaposition with the tenderness of the rice. I also have peanuts for a crunch. These are just like unsalted dry peanuts that are going to get really nice and roasted in the pan, alongside the lentils and the mustard seed. So I'll add those first and I'll do that in a second alongside some vegetable oil. And then we'll actually add I think at the same time we add the curry leaves. Yeah. So this is one of the things I was really excited about finding in the co-op. They're curry leaves, and it's very rare to find them in a grocery store that's not an Indian grocery store. But I'm easily able to get them at the co-op, which is, a rarity. So we'll cook all of these. In the recipe, I have the mustard seeds being added at the same time as the peanuts, the lentils, and the mustard seed. And I have the curry leaves being added at the same time. So you want to make sure your heat isn't too high for that so that nothing burns, because a burnt mustard seed will cause bitterness and a burnt curry leaf will also cause bitterness. After we get those kind of like toasted, then we'll add our spices. The spices for this dish are extremely simple. There's turmeric, which is mostly for color. There's chili for spice, and there's salt for flavor. After that all gets cooked, then we'll add lemon juice, and then we'll add our rice and then garnish with cilantro. So those are the steps, and I'm going to get started now. So I'm going to turn on my pan and let it heat up a little bit before adding the oil. And I have this at about medium, almost medium low, because I don't want those, and I think I write in the recipe too. I say medium heat. So yeah, I would say medium, air on the side of medium low, just to prevent anything from getting burnt. And I'm also going to de-stem my curry leaves and add them to my mise en place here. Let me also chuck up on my rice. Starting to, simmer or like get a little bit hot, but it's not at a simmer yet. So I'm going to keep that on pretty high heat. And then the recipe calls for quite a bit of vegetable oil, like about 4 tablespoons of vegetable oil. I'm going to use closer to 1 to 2 since I'm halving the recipe. But you can use a little bit less oil if you prefer when you make this recipe. It's not a deal breaker. It's more just to prevent the rice from getting sticky, and some of the things that amount of oil is nice to get the peanuts really well toasted. So I'm going to add about 1.5 to 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil in my pan now, and also let that get hot for a second. And then if you're following along, don't be alarmed, but when you add these crunchy ingredients, there's probably going to be a little bit of splatter and crackling in the pan because there's water in the mustard seeds, and it's just the nature of these ingredients. So yeah, we're pretty hot. I'm going to give it maybe like 30 more seconds. Okay. And if you're not sure if your pan is hot enough, you can add a couple of the ingredients and see if they start to crackle. I just added a curry leaf and it's crackling, so I think I'm ready to go here. So I've added my mustard seeds, curry leaf, the lentils, and the peanuts. And then I'm just gonna get a spatula, which my utensil of choice here. I'm gonna even put my heat a little bit lower. And I'm gonna start to move these around. And when they're the right color and texture, I'll bring the pan over and show everyone what it looks like. But yeah, you're looking for like a nice browning on the peanuts, for the curry leaves to get really toasty or really crispy, and for you to smell like a nice aroma as well. And my rice is starting to simmer, so we're getting closer to be able to cover it. I'm also just giving it a stir to make sure that there's no rice getting stuck to the bottom of the pan.
Srishti, it's really great that you explained the reason for the amount of oil. I know that when you write a recipe, you all aren't always given the room on the page to write the reason for every single ingredient and the amount. So it's really nice to hear what you would miss out on should you decide to cut back, and what the oil does in terms of preventing sticking, preventing burning, all that sort of thing.
Thank you. So I'm starting to get really nice color on my lentils, which I'll come show you. So you can see that the curry leaves are starting to get crispy, and then the lentils have darkened in color slightly. They've gotten kind of like a golden toast, and the peanuts are starting to be aromatic. I'm going to still give this about 2 minutes because I want the peanuts to be a lot browner. So we'll give this 2 to 3 more minutes, but you can see a little bit of how it looks there. And then my rice is simmering, so I'm going to cover it and bring the temperature down to a medium low. And then this will go for 12 minutes. So it's 7:44. It's going to go till 7:56.
I have one question. Somebody is asking, if you don't have the yellow dal, can you use red ones or a different lentil?
Yeah, totally. I think red lentils would be a nice substitute. To be honest, the reason I use yellow lentils and the reason I believe they're used is just tradition. It's not necessarily taste or, any kind of lentil can provide the crunch. I think red would be the best option as an alternate because something like a French lentil or a brown lentil has a skin on it. And that might be like a little bit less appealing when it comes to eating when it's not cooked. So yeah, but red lentils would be perfect. That's a great question. Or you can use a different type of yellow lentil like a mung bean or something like that. Okay, I hear this crackling. It sounds really great. Still gonna let the peanuts get color for like about 1 more minute, I would say. And while we're waiting for that, I'm gonna squeeze some of my lemons. So the recipe calls for a fourth of a cup of lemon juice, I believe. Let me double check that. Yeah, a fourth cup. So I need about an eighth cup. Yeah, they're raw peanuts. So I'm just squeezing 1.5 lemons, like 3 lemon halves. And I think that'll get me about 1/8 of a cup, if not more. I actually have, I squeezed 1 lemon and I already have 1/8 of a cup. So I guess I'm good to go there. I don't need to do that last half. And also the lemon juice is to your taste as well. If you like a really lemony flavor, you're welcome to add a little bit more. But you know, it is lemon rice, so I like to go pretty heavy on the lemon. Okay, so we're at a really nice place with these guys. You can see the peanuts are super brown here, and it's really aromatic. So now I'm ready to add my salt and my spices. So I'm adding turmeric and the red chilies and salt. And you want to toast this for a few minutes because to kind of get that raw, anytime I use spices like turmeric or cumin or coriander, you want to get the raw bite, especially of turmeric, off, and you're going to get that by toasting it for a bit. So yeah, I'm going to let this go for about a minute. And the turmeric will kind of brown pretty quickly too. I'm still on that low medium heat because I don't want anything to get too burned. And then, yeah, I think that's good. And then now I'm going to add my lemon juice and let that cook for a bit. I'm actually going to turn because my rice isn't ready yet, I turn up the pan and I can give you a look. You just want your lemon juice to simmer for a second, and things are going to look slightly yellow, slightly brown. And yeah, you just want kind of the salt to fully dissolve into the lemon juice, which will happen pretty quickly. I'm using a stainless steel pan, so my pan's really hot. So I'm going to keep the heat off for now, actually, until my rice is done cooking, which will be in about, yeah, like 5 to 6 minutes. So while we're waiting for that, I'm also just going to get my garnish ready, which is some cilantro. And I'm just going to use a pair of kitchen shears to cut them, as that's become my new favorite way to prepare herbs, rather than using a knife. So just chopping up some cilantro here. Thanks, Mandira. Okay, any questions for me while we wait for the rice to be ready?
I have a question. I'm wondering if you can describe the flavor of a curry leaf for people who may not have encountered them either dry or fresh.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the flavor of a curry leaf is slightly bitter, especially if you eat it raw. But it has this like aromatic, to me, it actually tastes a lot like mustard seed, if you're familiar with how black mustard seed tastes. But let me eat one right now and see if I can think of. Yeah, it has like a very slightly bitter, very herbaceous taste to it. It's kind of hard, like in my mind, there's nothing that can really replace a curry leaf because it has a very distinct flavor.
And Christina
Um,
is asking about the scissors.
I use it for practicality. I think it's just a lot simpler to use scissors compared to using a knife and then picking up the herbs with the knife. So yeah, I am using it for practicality above anything else. I think it's like a Korean technique to use with green onion, and so um, I've seen people do that and wanted to do something similar. Also, at this point, I tasted a curry leaf in my mix. And I feel like my mixture can actually use a little bit more lemon. So I'm going to add the last half of the lemon. And I see Greg asks, okay, I'm going to answer these questions. So, Greg, I need tricks to store cilantro without it going bad in a day or two. So, the way I like to store cilantro is and most of my fresh herbs is I take a jar with a little bit of water, so the stems of the herbs sit in a little bit of water, and then I cover them with a Ziploc bag or a plastic bag of sorts. Another option is after you can prep your herbs by rinsing them and drying them, and then laying them between paper towel and putting them in a Ziploc, and that keeps them fresh too. So that works really well for me. And then someone asked, can you freeze leftover curry leaves? Yes, I actually normally keep my curry leaves in the freezer because they don't have that much moisture. They're pretty dry, so it doesn't fundamentally alter the state of them. The way my mom actually freezes them is 95% of the time her and I use curry leaves. They're fried in some sort of oil. So she actually pre-fries the curry leaves and then freezes them. So they're ready to go that way. I'm a little bit lazy, so I don't do it like that. And I find no problem with just freezing them directly. But yeah, you can keep them in the freezer. And I keep a lot of herbs. Like if I'm traveling, I'll put some of my other herbs pre-cut in the freezer as well. Okay, we have about 2 minutes left on the rice, and in the meantime, I'm gonna add the rest of this lemon. So that's ready to go. I also think it can use a little bit more salt, so I'm gonna add a little bit more salt. I added about a half tablespoon of salt from my original, around 1 tablespoon. I also eyeballed the original because I cook more intuitively than recipe based. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna turn off the rice in a minute and then we'll let it sit for about 2 minutes, and then we'll add it to the pan. We'll fluff it and then add it to the pan and have it ready to go. And I'll also get a plate ready to put everything on. And so we can garnish it under. Oh, and someone has linked an herb keeper. Interesting.
Srishti, I think at the beginning, did you say something about the option of using leftover rice? For people who may have come in a little bit later, can you talk about that again?
Yeah, so you can use leftover rice that you have in the fridge. This is a really nice way to use leftover rice, similar to making like a Chinese fried rice. In the book I call it an Indian fried rice. And the way you would do it, or like if you want to translate it directly from the recipe, is I use 2 cups of uncooked white rice in the recipe, but if you have 4 cups of cooked rice, that would be the correct ratio to make it. And the best way to kind of use the rice or leftover rice is maybe use your hands to separate it, and then add it to your mixture, and you can heat it over the stove, and it works perfectly just as well as fresh rice. It's also time for me to turn off my rice. I'm not going to open it just yet because I want it to sit for a few minutes to make sure it's fully cooked. And so we'll give it a second before doing that. But I'll turn my mixture back on, my lemon mixture back on to really low heat. So it's completely ready to go when I'm ready for the rice. Is anyone here a Knicks fan and gonna watch the Eastern Conference Finals first game tonight? Tough crowd. No Knicks fans? Oh, okay. Michael, thank you.
Srishti, if we had 2 hours for a class, what recipe or maybe pair of recipes from your cookbook would you want to show us?
Sure, that's a nice question. Okay, I really like this recipe, the spinach with the, oops, the spinach with the whole roasted cauliflower. So the book is entirely plant based, and the whole point of the book is to not use many vegan substitutes because um, you know plant-based cooking and eating has existed in the East for centuries. Without things like vegan cheese or vegan yogurt, and so I use traditionally Eastern ingredients and techniques. And one of the techniques that I use in this, which is the spinach with whole roasted cauliflower, and I also use it in this dish called the jalapeno butter tofu, which is supposed to be similar to like a butter paneer or a butter chicken, is soaking cashews and blending cashews with spices and cooked tomato and onion to make a cashew cream, which is something that people in India have used traditionally to make sauces really creamy, and it's traditionally plant-based. So I really like that recipe. I also feel like with the whole roasted cauliflower, it's kind of like a showstopper. And then I would also definitely choose one of the yeasted breads. So I have an entire chapter grains and on grains and breads. And so I have something like I have a garlic confit naan. So it's my take on a garlic naan, but you make a garlic confit for it. So the garlic is like really roasted and spreadable on top of the naan. So I think those would be a really nice pair. And then I see someone ask, do you fry paneer or let it soak in hot water before adding to a dish? I find frying unnecessary and it dries it out. That's a nice question. I think it truly depends on the dish. I tend to do neither of those techniques. So if I'm making like a curry based dish, like a matar paneer, like a paneer with peas, then I will, just cut it up and add it. And I feel like if you don't do anything with it, it absorbs the flavor really well. But something like a paneer, like a palak paneer, which is like with a really smooth spinach sauce, I think sometimes frying the paneer just adds a nice texture to it. So if you like the texture of fried paneer, go for it. But if you feel like it dries it out, I tend to err on the side of not doing it. And then Layla asked, do you parboil the whole cauliflower and then roast? That's a great question. I actually, in the recipe, tent the cauliflower with foil, and it's covered in a butter mix. And by tenting it with foil and putting it in the oven, it kind of pseudo steams it, rather than completely drying it out. And it's a quicker way to roast it. So I first tent it and then I remove that foil and then allow it to roast so it's fully cooked. I think we're also at a point where our rice is ready. So I'm going to, yeah, it looks great. And I'll show it to the group in a second. So you can see it here. It's fully cooked. And not only that, you can see the individual grains separately, which I was mentioning earlier I really like about basmati rice. It doesn't clump together too much. And so I'm going to use my spatula to fluff it. And then normally the recipe calls you to move the rice to the pan that you've been cooking your peanuts and curry leaves in. But I'm actually going to do the opposite just because I think it's a little bit simpler here. So I have my mixture with the peanuts and the lentils and the lemon juice, etc. here. And I'm going to add it directly to my rice. And then I'll bring it over and show you as I mix it. Okay, so you can see now, and because of the turmeric, the rice is going to take on that really beautiful yellow color now. Similar to what you see in the photo. And I have some crispy bits of rice on the bottom actually, which is nice. Okay, and then I'm also going to add my cilantro for that green color and a bit of freshness. And I actually like adding it when the rice is hot and it gets like a little bit wilty and clings to the rice better, which is really nice. Okay, and here you can see some lemon rice.
That is beautiful.
Thank you. And I can talk a little bit too about things that I like to eat this with. Um, I was mentioning yogurt beforehand, but I have this yogurt that I like to get at the co-op. It's the Burley Farm cow milk yogurt. It's delicious. It's like European style yogurt, which is really similar to Indian style yogurt. And then I also have this roasted garlic pickle, a jar, which I believe we also have at the co-op. It's from Brooklyn Deli, so it's a Brooklyn brand, which is really cool. Um, and I feel like these add like nice flavor and texture to the lemon rice. Great, and there's our lemon rice.
Greg has a comment about paneer, if you want to take a quick look, something
I
that
love that. My aunt loves frying paneer in salt and pepper and olive oil. She used to like Gobi brand, but now she prefers the organic paneer at the co-op. That's nice. I like the Gobi brand too. I actually have started exclusively making my own paneer, which is like the easiest thing in the world to do. I just use whole milk and I boil it and add lemon juice to it to curdle it, or you can add a little bit of vinegar to it to curdle it, and then I strain it through a cheesecloth and let it sit with a heavy weight on top for like 2 hours, 3 hours. And it's like the perfect way to use milk that's going to go bad pretty quickly too. So if anyone is inspired to make their own paneer, I promise it's extremely easy. Great. Any other questions?
do you ever use the same kind of technique where you're frying your herbs and then of course you have peanuts and other things in your pan and put it over something else? Is that like a common way to create a grain dish?
Ooh, okay. That's a good question. I do something similar called a chalk. And so let me show that actually. It's like a way that it's kind of like a chili oil, and you can add any of these things to it. So in my book, it's called chili oil or chalk, and it's like a nice thing to add on top of rice, curries. I add it on lentils. And so traditionally it's with ghee, but in my book, I use oil because it's a plant based book. And you can, excuse me, you can add things like mustard seeds. I add whole chilies. I add garam masala. I'll add red chili powder. In this, I add black peppercorns, curry leaves. Cumin seeds are a really nice thing to add it, which we call jira. And if you wanted, you could add lentils too. So, yeah, chalk is like a pretty common thing in North and South Indian cooking. I think like the specific things you add to it really depend on your family as well as kind of like where you're from, but it's added to all sorts of, especially like a lentil curry that tends to be a little bit plain or simple. Adding something like that on top makes it really delicious. And I'll actually show you. I also have a picture in my book. I have this masaman curry dal, which is like a lentils dish that you make a curry paste for, and then you can see that chili oil chalk right on top of it.
Oh.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, that's the book. It's available kind of everywhere, and I think it'll be available at the co-op too in a few weeks. So if you're perusing the cookbook section there, then you might see my book as well.
Amazing. We have lots of people saying it looks great, delicious. Thank you. And can you tell us a little bit about your book tour? I know that you're out west
Yes.
right now for signings and readings.
Yes, I can talk a little bit about my book tour. So I'll be headed to California tomorrow. And so if there's anyone from California in the call, next Tuesday, the May 27th, I have a book talk at Omnivore Books on Food in Noe Valley in San Francisco. That San Francisco is my hometown, so super excited there. And then on the 30th, there's a new pizza spot in San Francisco called Jules Pizza. It's by the ex-13 cuisine director of cuisine, and he just opened a pizza spot. And I'll have a plant-based pizza there based on recipes from my book. And then the following Tuesday, which I believe is June 3rd, if anyone here is in Los Angeles, I'll be at Now Serving in Los Angeles for a book talk as well. And the omnivore talk is completely free. You can just show up. And the Jules Pizza, I believe there's reservations and walk-ins. And then the Now Serving event is ticketed. So I think their website has tickets.
You mentioned making paneer. Do you make your own yogurt ever?
No, my mom makes her own yogurt, but I've never attempted it. I love doing all sorts of kitchen projects like making sourdough or like making paneer, but or any kind of fermented things like kimchi, but I haven't figured out yogurt just yet. But it's next on the list. Do you make your own yogurt, Rana?
Not really. I have, but it's never as good as what I want it to be.
Fair.
Yeah, but I'll taste your mom's.
Yeah, yeah, I should bring her starter.
Any other questions, anybody? Great class, very interesting, lots of great comments. Mandir, who's one of the co-chairs for the cooking squad, says that co-op members can also make requests for your book through the member services. So make a special order.
Thanks.
And
I
I
appreciate
have
that.
maybe one of the last questions, which is how many of the recipes, even though they have your own spin on them, how many of them did you grow up with? How many of them, you refer to your mom, of course. Is your mom in this book a lot?
Yeah, no, I love that question. So the book is actually dedicated to my mom, and then I'll show you my nani, my dadi, and my mom. And my nani is maternal grandmother. My dadi is my paternal grandmother. So I feel like, especially in India and in my family, the like cooking is like a very maternal tradition. And so a lot of the book, I will say like 50, at least 50%, if not like 60% of the book is based on techniques that I've learned from my mom. They're not all like something like the lemon rice is something I ate growing up, but something like there's like an upma, which is like a semolina porridge with like a braised spring pea. And I ate upma a lot growing up with the peas directly in it. But then I put my own twist on it with braising the spring peas separately with garlic and lemon juice because that's just a technique that I like with peas, and I feel like that's common in Californian cooking, and I'm a Californian Indian chef. And so there's like twists on things that she makes, and then same with like twists on things that my grandma would make, and then things like breads, those are very much like that's my forte. My mom is not as much into breads. She makes like paratha and roti, but things that are yeasted like naan, she does less often. And so that's something that I love pastry and I love bread. So things that I really kind of have developed myself. Same with dessert. I'm a
I was
big
going to
dessert.
say, are there desserts in the book?
Yeah, there's an entire dessert chapter, and I'm primarily like kind of on do pastry. I actually, if anyone here lives in Brooklyn, I make pastry at Rodora in Fort Greene every Friday. So if anyone wants to come try those pastries, you should come by. But I have some things that are things that she makes because traditional Indian kitchens often didn't have ovens, and so like we didn't really use our oven growing up at home. Um, and my mom would just use the oven for storage, really. And so a lot of Indian desserts don't use the oven. And so I have things like this Shrikand, which I use a plant based yogurt with an apricot compote. You don't need an oven. You don't need any, actually, you need heat to make the apricot compote, but you can just use jam at home too. So it's like a really nice summer recipe. Same with like the kheer, which is like a rice pudding. This is something that you can easily make on the stove. But I also have like a Black Forest cake, which is a completely vegan cake in here. And I
Amazing.
see a couple people have asked, are there any vegan pastries in Fort Greene? Um, I take requests. Like I traditionally have been not making vegan desserts, but I totally can one week. And I normally post it. They post it on their Instagram. I post it on my own Instagram. I definitely want to do an ice cream, like a ice cream bar soon. Like do a different couple different flavors ice cream there, and I'll definitely do a couple vegan ice creams. So stay tuned. But yeah, I'm happy to do some vegan pastry there if there is demand for it from the Brooklyn community. I can
And
make too.
they're on sale just the one day that you're there.
Yeah, usually just I do desserts on Fridays. I think they have an ice cream sandwich the rest of the week, but which they just introduced, but I don't think it's vegan. But yeah, usually it's just Fridays, but if there's demand for it, I might start doing it twice a week. So, but
Great.
for now it's Fridays. Yeah.
Sounds great. Um, and somebody's already demanding it.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll try a vegan one.
Yeah. And it's Redora Wine Bar, right? Is that the
Redora Wine Bar,
where you
exactly.
are? Yeah, it's not a pastry shop, but well, it's a beautiful, sweet little place. And then Mandir also just posted some information in the chat about our cooking class about 1 month from now in June. So for those of you who would be interested in continuing to join us, please check that out. That will be up if it's not already on the website. And that's a class that I'm leading. And for those of you who are vegetarian or vegan, that recipe is in your wheelhouse as well.
Thank you
Any
so
other
much.
questions, anybody? That was amazing. Thank
Thank
you.
you. I really
Yeah.
appreciate the comments. It means a lot to me. Thank you, everyone who joined, and for your lovely comments.